If the science of reading is backed by decades of research, and schools are saying that they're shifting to the science of reading, why are so many kids still struggling to read? As someone who literally coaches across the country, I can tell you this isn't a knowledge issue, it's an implementation issue. Schools are saying one thing's happening in the classroom, but when you actually walk in there, something completely different is going on. Miss Brown here. Let's talk about what the science of reading actually is and why it matters. What the heck we were doing before that contributed to this literacy crisis that we're in, and why there seems to be a gap between research and what's actually happening in the classroom. First, let's clear something up. The science of reading is not a program. It's not a curriculum. It's not a trend. It is a large body of interdisciplinary research from cognitive science, neuroscience, linguistics, and education. You might be familiar with the simple view of reading, which tells us that word recognition and language comprehension equals reading. Or you might even be familiar with Scarborough's reading rope, which shows us that skilled reading is made up of many different strands that become automatic over time. But word recognition has to be explicitly and systematically taught. And that is because learning to read is not natural. It is not like language acquisition, although it may seem as it is. Year after year, national data has shown us that a significant percentage of fourth graders are not reading proficiently. And when a child struggles with reading, they struggle with science, they struggle with social studies, they struggle with math, because reading is the gatekeeper. For quite some time, classrooms lean heavily on balanced literacy. And if you've been in education for a while, you might be familiar with Lucy Calkins. And with this approach, students were encouraged to use multiple cues, so meaning, structure, and visual cues to figure out a word. Let's say I'm a kindergarten teacher teaching reading, and I would have this book up and I would say, use the picture to help you read this word. And the student would say, cat. Now, the problem with this is that they didn't just read that word, they guessed from the picture. And guessing is not reading. And what would really trip teachers up is when a student would say kitten and not cat. And now it's like, ugh, what do I do? Without that explicit phonics instruction, many children were just not building those strong decoding skills. And that was the problem. But here is where things get interesting. Across the country, districts are shifting to the science of reading, right? This is great. Teachers are attending professional development, school districts are adapting new curricula, but there's still a gap. Because understanding the science and actually implementing the science is not the same thing. In my coaching work across multiple states, I have seen teachers who can explain Scarborough's reading rope just beautifully. But during instruction, students are still guessing. School districts are using curriculum that claim to be systematic, but instruction isn't explicit. I've seen students have decodable text in their hands, but they're not accountable for actually decoding those words. Teachers are doing it for them. The gap right now isn't awareness, it's execution. And I do get it. This shift requires teachers to unlearn practices that we were once trained in and used for decades. It requires pacing adjustments, stronger content knowledge, administrative support, curriculum fidelity, and time. And I truly have compassion for teachers who are learning and growing on this professional journey. But it is not an excuse to not take action. It is not an excuse to say, well, I've been doing this for 30 years and it's been fine. They got it. And we already know which students are going to get the short end of the stick. When teachers are not committed to the science with proven results, We already know which schools, which districts, which areas are going to be impacted the most. We can't afford that. We need to ensure explicit phoneme grapheme instruction, a systematic scope and sequence, daily phonemic awareness, decodable text aligned to instruction, and diagnostic assessments in the beginning and along the way so that the teacher is adjusting their instruction. And if you think I'm missing anything, drop it in the comments below. If these pieces aren't happening consistently in the classroom, they're not fully aligned to the research, even if they say they are. If you're a parent listening to this and you were like, whoa, that was a lot, here's what you should be looking for. Is my child being explicitly taught how sounds connect to letters? Are they reading in decodable text? Can they blend sounds without a picture? I've seen firsthand that knowing the science and doing the science are two completely different things. The next phase of this is definitely implementation. That is where our focus should be in the world of education. If you are a school leader or even a teacher looking for some coaching support, I'm going to drop a link in the description where you can book a free 30-minute call with me and we can talk a little bit more. The same is true if you're a parent, you can use that same link. I also work directly one on one with children. If you found this even a tad bit helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.